The marvelous adventure of Superman.
Lex Luthor rushed through his lab, his battlesuit damaged from his confrontation with the Kryptonians. Had he not bested Supergirl when he did, she might have put him down for good. Lex ran in a panicked haste as he looked down at his smashed glove, the shattered pieces of kryptonite still embedded in his gauntlet. His only protection from those aliens, those freaks who claimed to be their protectors. Lex pressed his personal access code and activated his personal project, Refuge. He had yet to test the device, but if it worked, it would send him to the parallel Earth he had encountered where Superman was Ultraman. As Lex recalled it, scientific advancement in that reality far surpassed that in his own world. He knew that Ultraman would love nothing more than to help with the demise of his counterpart. A small compartment along the wall opened up to reveal Lex's interdimensional rift generator. It was a small, square device that almost resembled a box. Lex had used the remains of a mother box that he had recovered from Darkseid's invasion attempt years prior. As Lex reached out and picked up the box, there was a loud crash and a sound of metal bending. Lex was almost thrown off his feet by the shockwave of the blast. As Lex looked up, he could barely see him through the smoke caused by the mixing chemicals on the floor. But he could see the blue of his chest, and that symbol that had come to haunt his life. Kara's blood smeared along it. Lex heard his voice boom, angrier than he had ever heard him before.
Madman!
In a moment, his fingers were around Lex's throat.
You deserve to die for what you've done. To Metropolis, to Kara. How many more people are you going to leave dead in your wake?
Lex could see the tears in his eyes as his face began to contort with the pain caused by the kryptonite, but it didn't hurt him like it used to. Clark stood his ground, his fingers digging into Lex's throat. Lex could feel the grip around his throat loosen as the kryptonite began to take a more direct effect on Clark. Lex threw up a powerful armored fist that crashed against the head of the Man of Steel. Clark stumbled back as Lex pointed his undamaged hand and fired a repulsor beam directly into Superman's chest, sending him flying backwards into a cabinet, which crumpled like paper. Lex quickly turned his attention to his box, pressing several buttons. As Lex's box began to activate, emitting a strange yellow glow, Clark got up to his knees, throwing the remains of the cabinet off of him.
No. No one else dies because of you.
A high-intensity heat vision blast exploded from Clark's eyes and charged towards Lex, who put the box between himself and Superman's attack. As the blast hit the box, the yellow light mixed with Superman's heat vision, turning the bright yellow light into a bright swirl of orange. Orange light stretched out and touched every corner of the lab, and with one violent snap, the whole lab was sucked into the center of the light. As the light dissipated back into the box, it fell to the ground of the ruined floor, a single green light flashing on its panel as water streamed out of the now exposed water main. Avengers Mansion was strangely empty. Tony Stark worked away on his new space-ready flight suit. He was still having trouble finding a suitable metal to withstand re-entry. But thankfully, Thor, who had recently returned from Asgard, had brought some metals with him that, fused with the right combination of Earth metals, would provide a suitable coating for his suit. Thor was in the waiting room, watching a news report about Reed Richards and his latest development in biochemistry, utilizing the super soldier serum to create a cure for many of the known cancers that plague mankind. His serum was still under research, but Richards was hopeful about the results.
This just in.
The news report cut out to a special news bulletin.
Several miles above the small area of Tyree City, there was what appeared to be a small sonic explosion. A man who was celebrating his daughter's birthday caught a glimpse of the strange occurrence.
The screen cut away to show a video of a small girl opening up a present to reveal a bright pink pair of sneakers. The girl's eyes began to shine with happiness when someone shouted out,
There, up in the sky.
The camera swung around quickly, catching a glimpse of what appeared to be a large, off-shaped rectangular object, which seemed to appear in the sky with a wave of orange light. Then, an instant later, the object seemed to break into several thousand pieces and explode apart. Thor had risen from his place on the chair he sat in.
What in the name of Valhalla?
Thor wasn't sure what he had just seen, but something had been missed in the report. Something important. Thor came bursting down into Stark's lab.
Here, Lord Stark.
Tony sighed heavily as Thor's voice boomed through his lab.
I've told you 1,000 times, my name is Tony. Not Lord Stark, not the ironclad magician. Tony. Just Tony.
You waste our time with this nonsense. There is a captured image series you must observe.
Another sigh escaped Tony as he rubbed his mustache against his face.
It's called... Never mind.
Tony turned to his computer and alt-tabbed his program and brought up the internet browser, which Tony had forgotten was on a search engine looking for pictures of himself with Eva Longoria. Thor gave a disapproving glance at Tony.
What? I was out late on Friday and I heard that the lovely Eva Longoria was involved.
Thor shook his head, disregarding what Tony said.
Quest for the video of the strange explosion of Tyrrell City.
With almost lightning-fast fingers, Tony began to type into the search engine. Within seconds, he had found a link to the video and pulled it up. Tony watched the video with Thor, who was watching intently, searching for something he had missed.
Wow, that is weird. What do you think it could have been? Alien spacecraft? Military experiment gone wrong? Could just be the mutants acting up again.
Tony said as the video ended. As Tony searched his brain for a logical conclusion to the event, Thor reached out and grabbed the mouse, pulling the time index of the video back to the time where the object seemed to blow apart. Thor watched it several times before pausing on a select frame.
Hawk, do you see Lord Stark?
Thor pointed a large finger towards the computer screen.
Don't touch the screen. Grease is bad. I can't stand John Travolta.
Tony said as he pulled out some Windex and began to scrub at his computer screen.
Divert yourself from this ignorant twiddle. Look.
Tony looked up to Thor, almost insulted.
Twiddle? Is that even a word?
Tony then felt a strong hand grip the top of his head and turn it until he was facing the computer screen. And there, Tony saw them.
What the hell were those?
There in the debris was what looked like two separate streaks going off in two different directions. One a green streak, and the other a bright red one.
Dares we find out. Gather your wits, Lord Stark. There may be danger about in Tyrrell City.
Thor lifted Mjolnir into the air.
Avengers, assemble!
Thor shouted at the top of his lungs, his magic hammer making his voice echo throughout the mansion. Tony grabbed hold of Thor's shoulder and swung him around.
What have I told you about using your magic voice echo thing in the mansion? If there are any more broken windows, I'm taking your hammer away.
Thor's face suddenly turned crimson red.
Should you lay a finger on Mjolnir, you would be dead before you reach the floor. Cur.
Hey,
Tony interjected quickly.
I looked that word up. Don't call me that anymore.
Thor's eyes and his anger never wavered, and Tony knew when to back down from a god with an anger management issue. Tony took several steps back with his hands up in the feet.
Okay, fine. I'll get my tin can on.
Tony said in haste as he made his way to the platform, and with the push of several buttons on the projected heads-up display, the mechanical Goliath began its procedure to encase Tony Stark in his Iron Man casing. Within seconds, he was adorned in his shiny gold and red armor, his blue chest piece shining brightly. His eyes turned a bright blue to indicate that his visuals were up and running.
I'm good to go.
The mechanically distorted voice of Iron Man said as he returned to the room to see Thor and Hawkeye standing there in their outfits. Thor with his winged helmet and red cape, and Hawkeye with his purple mask and bow.
Oh, look at that, Thor. Only one extra member.
Iron Man said in a mock sadness.
'Twill take but the three of us to undertake this challenge.
Thor said with great bravado. Iron Man turned to Hawkeye.
I'm taking a break after this mission. I'm bound to kill myself if I endure too much more of this.
Iron Man's boots ignited and he took off into the sky through a door that opened up in the roof of the mansion.
Grab hold, my friend.
Thor said as he offered his hand to Hawkeye. Hawkeye took Thor's hand as Thor swung Hawkeye around his back and took off through the roof as the door shut closed behind them. Superman shifted in the rock and debris that covered him. He pushed up on a plate of lead that Lex had reinforced his walls with to keep him from seeing in. He took a deep breath as he pushed the plate off him. Clark felt the rays of the sun hit him and instantly began to recharge him. Yet, something felt different. Clark rose to his feet and looked around to see the lush green field that lay before him. He wondered where he was and how he had gotten there. Suddenly, he could hear a familiar sound of a personal jet propulsion system. Using his telescopic vision, he scanned the sky until he saw the bright gold and crimson red armor-plated beam soaring through the air. Only one person knew how to make armor like that. Clark took off into the sky, and in moments he collided with the armored man and took him down into the ground, crashing him into a green plane.
Gah! What the hell are you doing?
Iron Man said as he struggled in Superman's grasp.
Where's Luther?
Superman shouted, anger taking hold of him as he remembered the sight of Kara, her face so bloody and bruised that he couldn't recognize her facial features.
Luther? You mean Martin Luther King?
Superman slammed Iron Man into the ground with such force that Tony Stark later made the comparison of being a live sardine shaken around in a tin can.
Don't play games with me. Where is he?
Superman said with ferocity in his voice, as he was suddenly struck from the back by a well-placed lightning bolt being tossed several feet from Iron Man.
Keep thy filthy paws off the companion of the almighty Thor, mongrel.
Thor shouted as he clasped Mjolnir in his hand. Iron Man rose to his feet as Hawkeye ran up with his bow drawn, taking point beside Iron Man. Superman rose from the ground, anger swirling in him. More of Luther's metahumans. It didn't matter. They were going to tell him where Lex was. Superman took off from his spot, and as he did, Thor swung his hammer around in his hand.
Feel the might of Mjolnir.
Thor shouted as another lightning bolt exploded from his hammer, colliding with Superman and sending him flying into a nearby rock face and batting him into it. Thor fell to his knees and used his hammer to keep himself up. He had put a lot of energy into that attack since the first one seemed to have no effect. Thor collected himself and rose to his feet and went to investigate his opponent. He found the blue and red clad assailant unconscious in the rubble.
Where do you think he came from?
Iron Man said, and Hawkeye came up beside Thor.
I am unsure. I do believe it may be responsible for the explosion. We must make haste back to the keep before this cur regains consciousness.
Thor quickly scooped up Superman and took off into the sky.
Huh. And he just left you here to walk back?
Iron Man said as he turned to Hawkeye, who had a disbelieving look on his face.
You wouldn't.
Though Hawkeye couldn't see his face, he could feel the grin that must have been forming across Tony's face.
Wouldn't I?
Iron Man's jets kicked in, and in a moment he was taking off into the sky, waving back to Hawkeye as he went. As Hawkeye watched Iron Man fly off into the distance, he pulled out his cell phone from his pocket and pressed the number 2 on his speed dial. He waited for 2 rings before the phone was answered.
Hey, Nat. Can you give me a lift? Awesome. I'm just outside Tyrrell City. Oh, yeah? That's convenient. See you in a few.
Hawkeye put his cell phone away, and then took out a pack of gum and began to wait for the Russian shield agent to come pick him up.